Hi everyone, we'll be waiting 2 to 3 minutes before starting the webinar to accommodate for the rest of the attendees who are in the middle of connecting. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us and thanks for being part of our community. My name is Valan Kolika and I'll be your host for today. A few reminders before we start. If you have issues viewing the stream at any time during the presentation and are using the web browser version of Teams, please refresh your browser. If you're using the desktop app of Teams, please exit and rejoin. Now, please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared publicly. We will post the recordings on our community at aka.ms/security-webinars. Closed captions in several languages are available during the live broadcast, and you can enable them by clicking on the CC button located at the lower right corner of your screen. Feel free to ask questions at any time by typing them in the live event Q&A window, just by clicking on the Ask Question button. Now, be aware that any questions you post will be publicly visible. However, if you prefer, you can post your question anonymously by checking the box right below where you enter it. We often get many questions on these webinars, and we will do our best to respond to all of them in real time. In the event, if the answer was not provided, or if you may have additional questions post this event, please don't hesitate to raise them on our Azure Network Security forum at aka.ms/Azure Network Security Community. If you're listening to this after the fact as a recording, that's also a great place to ask a question. We love to hear your feedback on how we can improve these webinars, and you can do so at aka.ms/security-webinar-feedback. I would also like to invite you to join our public community by visiting at aka.ms/security-community. That's the best way to ensure you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements. On our community, you can speak directly to our engineering teams that create our security products. You'll be able to influence our product designs and get early access to changes by doing things like participating in private previews, request features, give feedback, review our product roadmaps, register for events, or join webinars like this. We believe that the best way to improve our products is by removing any barriers between you and the people that create them. So we hope you'll join us. In today's session, Mohit Kumar will guide us through boosting your Azure WAF deployment. Mohit is a senior program manager with our Azure Network Security team. And without further ado, I will turn it over to him. Mohit, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks for laying the groundwork. Hello, everyone. Good morning and good evening if you're not in the US. My name is Mohit Kumar, and I'm a Senior Program Manager on the Azure Network Security Customer Experience Engineering team. My team works on Azure DDoS protection, Azure Firewall, and Web Application Firewall products. These are the core area of focus for my team. And our goal is to improve experience of our customers with these products, drive awareness, and also assist our customers in deployment POCs. Today, we're here to dive a bit deeper into Azure Web Application Firewall. This session builds on previous seminar for WAF, which was titled Protecting Your Web Apps with Azure Web Application Firewall, where we discussed how Azure WAF protects your web applications against attacks, the various deployment options you have with WAF, the different rule types which are in WAF, like managed rules, custom rules, bot protection rules, other important configuration aspects and considerations. Here's our agenda for today. If you weren't able to attend the previous intermediate level session, not to worry, we've got you covered to a certain extent. We will be providing a link to the previous webinar in the chat window. And we'll also start by recapping the key features of Azure WAF. We'll then go over the various types of WAF tools, and then take a deep look at the WAF logging, which is generated when traffic is processed by WAF rules. We will then dive into even more advanced concepts of WAF tuning, and finally close with the WAF integration story. Along the way, we'll also do some live demos on different topics we'll cover in this presentation, as long as the demo gods cooperate with us. Okay, so let's start by reviewing the key features of Azure WAF. Azure WAF, if you're not familiar with it, is enterprise-grade protection for your web applications delivered through Azure. The WAF is compliant with 14 different compliance standards, including but not limited to PCI DSS, HIPAA BAA, SOC, and ISO. And when deployed in the right availability zone, WAF is highly available with both application gateway and front door with a 99.99% SLA. It auto scales when additional resources are needed to serve traffic, and protects against OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities with its out-of-box rule set. Azure WAF is integrated with both Azure Front Door CDN and Application Gateway. When combined with global services like Front Door and CDN, which provide application and content acceleration with regional load balancing, Azure WAF can detect and protect against attacks against your web applications at the network edge. When combined with Application Gateway, which provides VNet and resource level application load balancing, Azure WAF detects and protects against attacks against both publicly available and private web applications.
Hey Mohit, sorry to interrupt. Can you just try positioning your face differently from where your mic is? Just there's some voice. Can you just test it now? Let's see.
Is that better?
It just says a little bit more, few more words.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Okay, I think it's better now. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Both Azure Front Door and Application Gateway can publish web applications which are hosted either in Azure or out of Azure. For example, in on-prem or other cloud services, as long as they have a public IP. Okay. So here are some key manageability and security capabilities of Azure WAF. Starting from the top, the out-of-box protection against OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities with pre-configured web application protection rule set from Mod Security. And to add to this, Azure WAF also provides protection against malicious botnets, which may be used to attack your web applications. For example, in case of brute force attacks against your web applications. The botnet IPs are updated with best-in-class Microsoft Threat Intelligence feed, which is updated hourly. You're also able to create rate limiting rules based on various conditions in Azure Front Door to protect backend resources from common protocol and resource attacks. And on top of this, you can also create custom rules to create more granular allow, deny, or log rules to protect your application and resources. At the same time, all WAF operations and metrics are logged, which can be retained in log analytics and then analyzed with Azure Monitor and can be integrated with Azure Sentinel via the connector. And most importantly, all the administration and configuration can be performed either from the Azure portal with PowerShell, with Azure CLI, or with ARM templates and Terraform. Now, with an all-up understanding of Azure WAF features, let's now get into the heart of WAF protection, which is based on its rule sets. We will also look at WAF logging, which can be used to understand how WAF is processing traffic and to detect potentially malicious traffic patterns and identify false positives, which is also helpful in WAF tuning in the next few slides. Okay, so first up, let's look at the WAF rule sets, and specifically the OWASP protection rule set, which is the protection against web vulnerabilities. At a high level, there are two different types of rules in protection rules in WAF. One is the OWASP protection, and the other one is bot protection. And here we are talking about OWASP protection first. So as you're already aware, there are two versions of application gateway, V1 and V2, where V2 is the current SKU. Azure WAF on both versions of application gateway uses the core rule sets from Mod Security. In all, there are three versions of this core rule set currently supported by Azure WAF on Application Gateway. On Application Gateway V1, version 2.2.9 and 3.0 are supported, while V2 supports those two, plus 3.1, which is the most current version of the core rule set supported by WAF. These rule sets are available in Mod Security's GitHub repo, and at any time, I will go ahead and bring it up. At any time, when you want to understand what these rule sets comprise of, or exactly what logic, what is the logic of a specific rule, you could look through the code of individual rules and rule sets in this repo. So we can click it into any of these rule sets to understand what they have and what specific rules within these rule sets are looking for, what patterns they're trying to match. And this is helpful to us when we are trying to fine-tune our WAF to work with a number of different applications. And it's also helpful to us in determining if certain rules are not applicable, so we can disable them. And at the same time, if you feel like more checks need to be added, you can extend the capability of these rules by adding custom rules. Okay, so now let's go over the managed rules that we have for front door and CDN WAF. The default rule set 1.0 is the current version and is based on the same core rule set 3.1 from Mod Security, which is used in Application Gateway WAF. However, the WAF rule set in front door is a tuned version of the core rule set 3.1, which is intended to reduce false positive and is way less noisy than the Application Gateway version. The default rule set is also designed to protect your web application against common web vulnerabilities outlined by the OWASP 10 security framework. It is important to know that even though it is a modified version of the core rule set 3.1, you're still able to map the rule IDs from front door WAF, default rule set, to core rule set 3.1 from Mod Security by correlating the rule IDs in WAF with those in the Mod Security's GitHub repo. As you can see on this slide, there are three pictures, and so if you take the left picture on the left, it shows you the rule ID of the default rule set, which is in the front door WAF. You can take the first three numbers of this rule set and find the rule group for it in the Mod Security GitHub repo and drill down into the specific rule ID in that rule set in the same GitHub repo. We'll cover this in a demo in the next section. Okay, and then the other type of protection rule in WAF outside of the core rule set, which is the OWASP protection rule set, is the bot protection rule set, which can detect and protect against traffic originating from malicious botnets targeted toward your application. The bot protection rule set is based on Microsoft Threat Intelligence Suite. The key difference in bot protection capabilities of Application Gateway and front door WAF is that bot protection on Application Gateway only detects and acts on known bad bots. It does not have the ability to identify other types of bots, while Bot protection on front door can detect good bots, bad bots, and unknown bots, for which it can take different actions. Good bots would be would include validated search engines. Bad bots would be known malicious IPs belonging to known malicious botnets, spoofed IP addresses, and unknown bots are bots which are unclassified and need additional validation. Logging for bot protection on application gateway is available in the application gateway firewall log, while the front door WAF, it's available in the front door web application firewall logs. We have a couple of sample queries here that can be used to view what traffic was processed by these specific rule sets. Okay, and here's a matrix which summarizes the key difference between the WAF types on application gateway and front door CDN. When WAF is created as a function of application gateway deployment and not specifically created from the WAF policy blade, it is called a WAF config. The main thing to know about WAF config is that it is specific to one application gateway and cannot be applied to any other application gateway, while a WAF policy can be applied to multiple application gateways and has more features than WAF config. Most notably, the WAF config lacks bot protection and geolocation. Also, WAF config cannot be applied at a per site or a per URI level on application gateways. So that wraps up the first and second sections of this presentation. And to recap, we did a quick overview of the key features of Azure WAF and then looked at the two different types of rules we have in Azure WAF, core rule set and the bot protection rule set. We also went over the different versions of the core rule set supported by WAF and how to dig deeper into it by using the mod security's GitHub repo. We also looked at the differences between WAF config and WAF policies. And now let's dive a bit deeper into one of my favorite topics, WAF tuning. So let's first understand why tuning is important. Now, as we know that every application is different in terms of its design, architecture, its components such as web frameworks and languages which are used. Even sometimes it depends on the users who are using the applications and the people who are coding the application. And at the same time, the out-of-box rule set in Azure WAF are designed to be very strict because they're looking for all sorts of patterns which could be exploited against web applications and looking to block them. So it is expected that you will see some issues or even request failures with out-of-box rules. And there isn't a single solution or a thumb rule to make all applications work seamlessly with just out-of-box rules in WAF. And it is entirely normal and expected that you will need to tune your WAF to weed out failures and false positives. The first step in this approach is to run WAF in detection mode only and analyze the logs to understand what requests are being blocked and why. And when you're armed with this information, you can take several approaches towards tuning. For example, if you were using application gateway, you could start by using per URI or per site policies to limit inspection for specific application URIs or for entire sites. And the key benefit of this approach is that these policies will not impact anything else other than the applications which are defined in there, as these policies are not global. You could create custom rules to take desired, allow, deny, or log actions for your application, and also use exclusion lists to skip inspection based on the available match variables. We'll go over that in detail in the next few slides. You could also take the approach of disabling individual rules if they're not applicable to your application. However, we must have done our due diligence in making sure that disabling those rules is the right approach, else we end up creating more risk for ourselves. And finally, you could disable request body inspection altogether. And if you know for sure that your request, the request for an application will not contain data in the request body. In this case, request headers and cookies will still be inspected unless you're using an exclusion list to exclude inspection for headers and cookies as well. Also note that disabling request body inspection will mean that WAF will not be able to inspect data in the body of a request, even if it contains unexpected malicious data. So in most cases, your approach to fine-tuning WAF should incorporate both technical elements and a careful understanding and consideration of the security risk that will be created by tuning actions. When we exclude data from inspection or disable inspection altogether, for example, by disabling rules or disabling inspection of the request body, it means that WAF is looking at less and less data in the request headers or request client request, and that increases chances of a real attack going through WAF undetected. While on the other hand, not tuning WAF appropriately for your application can cause WAF to take undesirable action for legitimate requests and cause all sorts of failures and outages. Okay, so we've talked about why tuning is important. Let's before we go any deeper into this topic, let's just understand how application gateway and front door WAF apply their rule sets to assess and take decisions to block malicious traffic. The WAF on application gateway uses something called an anomaly scoring mode. In this case, if the traffic pattern is matched by a specific rule in WAF, it doesn't automatically block the traffic, but rather assigns an anomaly score to that request. When the anomaly score for that request reaches 5, which is the threshold, the request is blocked. In the table on the bottom left, you can see the different severity levels and their associated anomaly score values. As you can see, a single critical match will give a score of 5 and will end up blocking a request, while a single error or a warning match on a request by itself may not be sufficient to block the given request. Anomaly scoring is managed by Azure and cannot be customized. On the other hand, a front door WAF uses what's called a traditional detection mode, where we don't use anomaly score, but rather a match or a no match criteria. If the request pattern is matched by a WAF rule, it's blocked, else it's allowed. Because there is no anomaly scoring here, we are not dependent on multiple rules processing, flagging a bad request for it to be blocked. Okay. All right. So with that, we took a look at how application gateway and front door WAF are assessing and taking allow or deny decisions on traffic passing through them. Now, I will walk you through a demo. We'll first look at an application gateway log to understand the anomaly scoring, and then look at the front door WAF log to see how it matches and blocks malicious requests. So let's switch to the browser here. Okay, so in this browser, I have a couple of windows open. I'm already in the log analytics workspace where my application gateway WAF is logging traffic. And here's a query that I have used to pull up all blocked requests. So that will be the place to start. I'm going to look at pull up all the blocked requests, and I'm looking at a custom time range here. So let's see what it comes back with, and it actually works. We'll give it a second, and while it's doing its thing, we'll go ahead and do the same thing for front door. Or we already have that data. Should just take a second here, or a few minutes here. Okay, while this is pulling up data, let's switch over to and first look at the front door log instead of application gateway log, which is taking some time to come up. I already have the results for all the blocked requests in a front door web application firewall log. So we can see that these are all the requests which were blocked. Because I'm looking into Azure Diagnostic, which is where resource logs are stored. I'm looking for category, which is front door web application firewall log, which is where all the WAF logs are expected to be for front door. And then I'm looking for action block. So if I were to expand any of these requests, I can take a look at the different attributes of this this log. So for example, I can find out what is the request URI where the block happened, what was the client IP, what was the client port, if that's relevant. And the most important thing here is to understand, what is the message, or why is it that WAF blocked a specific request. We can see clearly here it says SQL hex encoding identified. So if we were to go into details of the match, we can expand that, and we can see that it's looking for the match variable we have is cookie, and this is the value that it's matched. And if we were to look at what is the rule, yeah, so this is the rule which has blocked the request. So this is rule for SQL injection 942450. I'm going to copy this rule, and I'm going to go to the mod security GitHub repo, and I'm going to just use the first three numbers. And so I found that SQL injection rule set. If I were to click in this rule set and then do a search again, I find this rule. And this is the exact rule which has blocked our request. If I look at the details of this rule set, it says this rule attempts to gauge whether there is excessive use of meta characters within a single parameter payload. And that's probably the reason why our request is being blocked. You can see the severity level is critical. And so if something, if there's a request which is matched by this rule, because the severity is critical, it will get blocked. And that's why this request was blocked here. Okay, so let's go back and see if we were able to pull any data for application gateway. It looks like it's still running. I'm going to give it another try. I'll maybe refresh my browser. Okay. Let's give it another try here. Okay, awesome. That worked. Okay, so if we were to look at, so what I've done here is basically, again, we went into Azure Diagnostic where all the resource logs are stored. We're looking at category, which is application gateway firewall log, which is where all the WAF logs are. And then we're looking for all the traffic which has been blocked by WAF. So that's our starting point. So we found a bunch of requests which have been blocked by WAF. So if we were to expand this one request, we can find this request was blocked because of anomaly score. And if we wanted to look deeper into this request, we can basically just take the transaction ID and say include. And if we run this, the one thing you have to do here in when you're looking up logs for application gateway or looking for a transaction ID in application gateway log is that you want to remove the action filter because because it's an anomaly scoring method. You will see that let me bring that up. You see that there are 5 different log entries here, but only 2 of them have a blocked action while others are matched. So this basically shows you how different rules in application gateway WAF will assess or evaluate a request. And through that process, there will be matches. And once matches happen, anomaly score will be assigned to the request. And when the anomaly score reaches a defined threshold, that's when a block happens. So if we were to look at these requests, we can see the message basically says, the first one says get or head request with body content. So we're not expecting a get request or a head request with body content in it. The second one says request is containing the content but missing the content type header. The third one says request containing content requires content type header, and that's why we have a match, and that's when that's where the anomaly scores are assigned. So if we were to expand these and try to figure out, yes, so what we're looking for here is what is the rule. So this is a protocol enforcement rule, and so if we were to go into mod security rule set again, get out of here and look for rules 920 protocol enforcement. And so So here in this rule set, we see many different checks for specific types of requests coming in. So what this rule set basically is saying that if there's a get or head request, do not accept get or head request with bodies. So that's one. So that's our first match here. If I were to just this and go here. So get or head request with content body, while a rule says do not accept get or head requests with bodies. That's the first match. The second one says the request containing content but missing content type header. So let's see which rule is that. It should be the same rule. Okay. So if we were to go here and say content type. Okay, so content type. Okay, so the rule will first check to see if the values of content length headers. Okay, this is not the one. Okay, let's find it. Trying to find it. Okay, block missing content type header with request body. That's the second one. So similarly, as you go through the specific rules or logic in the rule set, you will find all the different rule logic which is matching these this specific request, assigning it a anomaly score, and then finally we get to the two block requests where we see that by the time the third match happened, our anomaly score was 12, and we know that we only need an anomaly score of 5 to block the traffic, and this is why the block happened. And then the last request in this pattern will have a lot more details, and you can see here under message, it says total inbound score is 12. We didn't find anything specific to SQL injection, cross-site scripting, or remote or local file includes, but this is based on the individual paranoia level of the rules, where we feel WAF rules are basically configured to look for a content type header if there's a request body with a request, and also also configured to disallow any get or head request which has a request body. So that's why this is a match and a block happen. I hope this is clear. Okay. All right. So we've done the demo, and so to recap, so far in the WAF tuning section, we've talked about why WAF tuning is important, what is the right approach to tuning. We've reviewed how the application gateway and front door WAF use anomaly scoring and traditional scoring respectively. And then we did a demo of on how to look at application gateway and front door WAF logs to understand how WAF is processing the traffic, and to correlate the rule IDs in WAF with the mod security's GitHub repo to understand to get a better understanding of what the rule logic is. In the next few slides, we'll go over some key methods used to tune your WAF, including usage of exclusion lists, which is on the screen, creating custom rules, and also disabling managed rules. But first up, exclusion list in application gateway WAF. You can use exclusion lists to skip inspection for specific part of a request. You can do this by selecting the appropriate match variable. There are 3 match variables which are available in application gateway WAF. They are request header name, request cookie name, and request attribute name. It is important to understand that when using exclusion, you can disable or skip inspection for headers, cookies, or request attribute names, and not specifically allow or deny values which are being passed in them. It is also important to remember that exclusions are a global setting and that they're applicable to all traffic passing through your WAF. So you have to be extra careful when using exclusions so you don't impact other applications which are published to the same application gateway and using the same WAF policy, and which could end up making those other applications insecure. So let's just quickly look at how you can go about configuring exclusion in application gateway WAF. So here's my WAF policy, which is attached to application gateway. We can go into the policy settings blade, and this is where you can configure exclusion. You can select the match variable you want. So you can say request header name contains user agent. To what this will do is, if there is any request which has a user agent, it will allow that request. If you had a custom header, you could add that here, my custom header, and that would allow your custom header to go through. Similarly, for cookie name, you can select your custom. If you have a cookie that you want to allow specifically through WAF, or skip inspection for any request which contains that one cookie or specific cookie or cookie name, you can configure that here, my custom cookie name. And similarly, if there are any request attributes like which are being passed in the request body, you can configure that here. Okay. Right. Similarly, you can configure exclusions on front door WAF and CDN WAF. One key difference when using exclusions on front door and CDN WAF is that we have a little bit more control over exclusions, as we can configure exclusions against one specific rule or an entire rule group. And with this, the exclusion will not impact processing of any other rule which are not associated with a given exclusion. Let me just quickly show you that as well. So here I have the WAF policy, which is attached to my front door. You could go into manage rules and then select manage exclusions. When you come in here, you can click add. And as you can see, when you create an exclusion, you have the same match variables, but you can select what specific rule group you want to apply an exclusion against. So for example, SQL injection, you can also select, you can apply an exclusion against all rules in the SQL injection rule group, or you can select specific rule against which you want to apply an exclusion. And then you can select the header name, cookie name, request attribute name, or if there's a request body in a post request that you want to create an exclusion on. Okay, so let's get back to our slide. Okay. Okay, so now let's see how we can create a custom rule. There are different conditions you can use to create custom rules to meet your business and security needs. These custom rules can be used to match traffic patterns and then take allow, deny, or log actions against them. Custom rules are only available in Application Gateway v2, and you can have a maximum of 100 custom rules. So let me bring up a demo environment again and show you a few custom rules on Application Gateway. So here we have a couple of custom rules configured. So this is a geolocation rule where we've configured a block of traffic or denying all traffic from a geolocation, which is China. And then here we have another custom rule where we are looking for user agent contains IE11, and we're blocking that from requests originating from IE11 or requests which have a user agent IE11 from accessing our application. Okay, getting back to our slide deck. Okay, similarly, you can create custom rules on front door and CDN WAF. Here you can have custom rules which are of two types. You can have match rules, and you can also have rate limiting rules to protect availability of your application. You can combine match and rate limiting rules to create even more complex processing logic as you need it. So as an example, on the screen, we have a custom rule configured, which is configured to look at all the incoming requests, look at the request URI, and look for a string called search. And if the request URI contains string called search, but if the rate limit is more than 1 per minute, it would block it. So that's one example of combining match conditions and rate limit to create a more robust rule. And then creating custom rules when you're using WAF config. If you're using WAF config on Application Gateway v2, you don't have an option to create custom rules from Azure portal, but you can use PowerShell to configure desired custom rules and define conditions to suit your need. In this example on the slide, we have a custom rule which is configured to look for traffic originating from an IP address range 192.168.5.0, and the action is to block this traffic. You can also set rule name and priority with PowerShell. And then finally, disabling managed rule. If you've come to the conclusion that certain rules are not applicable or relevant to your application, you could safely disable them, but you have to be very careful. We have to be very careful in our analysis because disabling managed rules equals less protection, equals higher chances of malicious traffic going through WAF to your backend undetected. Managed rules can be disabled via Azure portal, PowerShell, or even ARM templates. Let me just quickly show you how to go about doing that. So if we were in Application Gateway, we can go into Manage Rules. We can expand rules, select which rules we want to disable. For example, I'm going to disable these top 2 rules, hit disable, and that will save, and that will disable the rules. As you can see, as I mentioned earlier, disabling rules exposes us to more risk sometimes, and that's why even I don't have the permission to block or disable rules in a demo environment. And similarly, you can do that in front door WAF as well. You can go into the policy, you can go into the managed rules, select the rules, and disable. Okay, so let's quickly recap what we've covered so far. We reviewed the key features of Azure WAF. We then reviewed the WAF rules, rule sets, logging, and then covered the WAF tuning, where we demoed how to use logs to understand WAF processing and correlate rule IDs with Mod Security's GitHub repo. We also looked at how to go about creating exclusions, custom rules, and disabling rules if necessary. This brings us to the last section of our presentation today, where we talk about WAF integration. So let's cover this. Okay, so let's look at the integration of Application Gateway WAF with Azure Kubernetes Service, where Application Gateway Ingress Controller, or AGIC, in concert with Application Gateway, helps monitor and configure application load balancing and exposure of those web applications or cloud applications to the internet. Azure WAF integrates seamlessly in this scenario, and the WAF on Application Gateway can inspect incoming traffic for OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities, and if it finds malicious traffic, it will take the necessary action to block it. And then lastly, protection for websites hosted on Azure App Service, where WAF can integrate with both Azure Front Door and Application Gateway to protect against web application vulnerabilities at the edge of Microsoft network or even your network. You can also lock down access to backend app service pools to only Front Door or Application Gateway with service endpoints. Well, that's all we have for you today, folks. It's been great talking to you on these advanced topics for Azure WAF. And I want to thank you all for your time to join in and listen. Over to you, Valen.
Thank you, Mohit. Although the folks or the team, in fact, has been covering on answering all the questions, I still would like to give a chance to the audience to see if they have additional questions through Poll EV. I posted the link, and it's pollev.com/security webinar. Let me also share my screen so we can take a look at the incoming questions. We'll give it 10-15 seconds, takes normally to trickle in for the questions. And here we have the first one.
AGIC is Application Gateway Ingress Controller. We'll share a link to more details about it in the chat window.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, looks like most of the questions that came through the chat, and we'll leave it at that. We'll just wanted to remind folks that in case we missed to answer your questions, or if you have additional questions after we conclude this call, you can always visit us on our Azure Network Security forum at aka.ms/Azure Network Security Community. This link has been also, well, I think we have another question coming in. Let me see here. There we go. Okay, I'll go ahead and paste this here so everybody can see it. Is it possible to apply blocking mode only for specific client IP?
Yes. Yes, you can use custom rules in Azure WAF to block specific IPs and IP ranges.
And then the next one is, can front door be multi-tenant or mutualized between the different apps?
I'm not clear on the question. Does anybody on the team have more clarity on this question than I do?
In terms of multi-tenancy, front door is it's a shared service, but you do have your own when you're using front door to front end your applications. It is your specific instances of front door, even though it is a shared resource that lives outside of your VNets, and you can use things like the front door X front door ID header that is passed by the front door to identify which front door and to verify that it is yours when traffic comes through. I think that's hopefully that speaks to the question.
Great. And then the next one is, does app gateway/FD WAF protect from zero-day web-based vulnerabilities, or is it depend on core rule set only?
Yeah, so today it depends on core rule set only. There isn't an inbuilt or out-of-box ability to protect against zero-day type of vulnerabilities, which would require signature-based blocking, signature-based detection and blocking. This may be possible with other third-party products. So.
Perfect. And then the last one, any chance to see graphically the blocked matched requests?
This ability is this is not a feature of Azure WAF directly, but I believe that this is available in Sentinel. So if you were to integrate or ingest Azure WAF logs in Sentinel, you could look at the requests which are blocked geographically in a map view.
Okay. And I think that brings us to the end. So just again, just to repeat myself, in case we missed or you have additional questions, please visit us on our Azure Network Security forum at aka.ms/Azure Network Security Community. So I would like to close this webinar by thanking Mohit for an awesome presentation. And thank you to the rest of the team who helped answering the questions. And of course, most of all, I want to thank all of you for being part of our community and for joining us on these webinars. We hope to see you next time. Goodbye.